From today, we'll start this new topic called capacity planning. So, when it comes to capacity planning basically means how an management can talk about managing capacity effectively, which is a key responsibility in the production and operation management. Okay, and the main goal of the capacity management is to ensure that the production matches with the customer demand. Okay, because in demand forecasting, we studied about the importance of doing calculation of demand forecasting. We discussed different methods, qualitative and quantitative methods were discussed about demand forecasting and all. But ultimately, when we have done the basic calculation of finding the demand and all, then what is the next objective? Okay, fine, you have calculated your expected demand and all, but the next objective is to make sure that the production, because whatever the demand calculation you have done, that is well and good, but the next thing is that the production what you're going to do, that should matches with the customer demand. Okay, I hope you're getting it. So capacity planning is concerned with finding answer to the basic question regarding capacity, such as what kind of capacity is needed, how much capacity is needed, and when the capacity is needed. Okay, so while planning capacity, the business must consider future growth, expansion, market trend, sales forecast, and the capacity here refers to the rate at which the facility can produce goods and services over the period of time. Okay, so I hope you're getting the meaning of the word capacity. Rashri, Gagana, Adi, you're getting the term what capacity is all about, what is capacity planning. Okay,
Yes, sir.
and because ultimately capacity planning is all about like how much you have planned and all, and then ultimately you have to whatever you planned you have to produce also. Okay, and then when you try to produce it, you'll find challenges. So capacity management or capacity planning, it refers to the how you'll come out of these challenges. Now the question comes, why capacity planning is important. Capacity planning is necessary because then the company must have enough capacity to meet the customer demand on time, because ultimately we have done demand forecasting and all, and then when we work on capacity planning, we'll get the idea that we need to have enough production so that your production should meet the customer demand, and that meeting demand is not important. Yeah, it's important, but meeting demand on time is very important. It influences how efficiently operations are being run. Okay, it affects production scheduling. It creating the new capacity involve investment. Whenever you are talking about capacity planning and all, and you are trying to make sure that your production matches with the demand. Now, when you work on the production part, and you need working capital, you need labor, you need machines, you need all possible resources so that you can work on capacity, and these all involve investment also, because you remember we talked about short term forecasting, long term forecasting, medium term forecasting. For short term forecasting, maybe we focus more on working capital, but when it comes to medium term and long term forecasting of the getting the desired good, we need to talk about investment, and that is the first step before launching new products. Okay, or increasing the production, where we need to talk about what would be the cash outflow and to start this new operation, or in order to increase the capacity on the new operation. So definitely it would affect the production scheduling. It influences how efficiently the operations are run. Okay, so you have studied in financial management also, that investment, capital expenditure, NPV, IIR, all that. Okay, so capacity planning, when we do capacity planning, it is mainly of two types. Okay, it can be long-term capacity plan, or it can be short-term capacity plan. So long-term capacity plan, it focuses on investment in new facilities or equipment. Okay, it covers a period of more than 2 years. So like when we are talking about planning beyond time horizon of 2 year, then it comes under long term capacity plan. While when we are focusing on short term factors like workforce size, overtime, inventory management, all that will come under short term capacity plan. So here in short term capacity plan will take care of parameters like workforce size, overtime budget, inventories. Okay, and here the when we talk about capacity, what do you mean by capacity? Capacity basically means the maximum output that the machine, your plant, your department, or worker can produce in a given time. So the maximum output will have a chapter on linear programming and all, where we'll talk about operation research. Operation research will talk about mathematical model of simulating the situation what we have around. But here basically when it comes to capacity, capacity basically means the maximum output your machine, your plant or department or worker can produce in a given time. That basically means the capacity. It represents the ability of the firm to meet the current and the future demand. Okay. Then we going further when we try to understand the parameters, what all parameters can affect your effective capacity. Okay. So those parameters are your facilities. Okay. Those parameters are your product. Okay, those parameters are your process. Okay, those parameters can you process. It can be human factor, it can be operational factor, okay, it can be external factor. So when we are trying to talk about the factors which affect the effective capacity, those factors can be facilities. Facilities basically talks about the design, location, layout, and working cap condition. Those are called facilities. Facilities means like when you are talking about meeting or matching your demand with the end customer getting the goods. Okay, when you're talking about meeting your demand with the production, here what matters is that when you engage in production, there would be an environment, there would be working environment where you do the production and all. That working environment, the design of that environment, the location, the layout, the working involved, all that comes under facilities. Product basically means product basically means the product, the end product on which you are working on, the where you are converting the raw material into finished good and you are selling in the market. The product, that product we are talking about, and that there you need to come up with an innovation. There you need to make sure that the end consumer should accept it without much dissatisfaction. So the product basically here we are talking about the capacity, and the capacity depends on the design and the variety of product which is being made. Okay. Then we talk about the process. In order to convert the raw material into finished good, you need to talk about the process. Okay, you need to talk about the process. What mechanism or what process you are gonna follow. It depends on how much quantity and quality the production process can handle. Then you have human factor. So when we talk about human factor, human factor include job design, motivation, training, experience, absenteeism, and employee turnover. So basically, when we are talking about human factor here, we are talking about human resource management, because we have the facilities where we have very good environment, we have a very good layout of machineries over the production will happen. So everything is fine. Then we have the raw material also. Sourcing of raw material is done. Now we can work on the raw material to convert into finished good. Okay. Next is that we know the process also, like what process will be followed by what process to get the end output. But what matters is the human resource, HRM, human resource management. The employee who are working, employees are not machine. So when the employees, when they are working in your company, you need to make sure that the employee get the proper treatment. Human resource factors nowadays are getting more important. Parameters like motivation, training, experience, absenteeism, employee turnover, all that should be taken very delicately. There should be set of team which should work and we should take care of human resource factors. That is very important for the long run of the firm. Then we have operational factor which relate to scheduling, material management, maintenance, and quality control. Okay, this is very basic when it comes to operational factor. I hope you are getting it. And then we have external factor which is not in our control. That includes product standard, safety rule, labor union, pollution control law, and all that also should be taken care. Nowadays in manufacturing setup, you need to follow quality standard, you need to follow government protocol of pollution control mechanism. Then you have union groups in your company. The human resources, they should be representative body which talks about their rights and all. Okay, that kind of groups also there. Then you have to follow proper standard as per ISO, as per other regulatory regulations also. So this all parameters you need to consider, or you need to keep in mind whenever we are talking about the effective capacity, and how that effective capacity is getting affected by multiple factors. So you got it, guys? Like, what are the factors which affect the effective capacity?
Yes, sir.
You understood what do you mean by capacity? Capacity, what is capacity? What is capacity planning, Rajshri?
Sir, capacity planning is where we produce to meet the customer demand on time.
Hmm. Capacity planning, I think, would be the next step. Once you realize that what would be the demand, once you realize that what would be the demand, short term or medium term or long term, then once you realize that factor, after that, when you start working on achieving that factor, so whatever would be the process, whatever would be the set of conditions you had to follow so that you will get the end product on time. That is what capacity planning is all about. Getting it, girls, right? So that is what we talk about, what is capacity planning. Now the question comes, why capacity planning is important? Adi, why capacity planning is important? Because capacity planning is important, because capacity planning is the first step before launching new product or increasing the production. So the first step, once you have everything in your mind, you did all your market research and all. So demand forecasting is nothing but it's a market research of realizing how much you have to produce. But after that, you realize that how much you have to produce, it doesn't mean that you will get the production. So after you realize that how much you have to produce, you need to think about, first thing is the working capital or getting the finances of getting the new capital. Like, so you need to first talk about the finances, the investment, okay, the working capital management. Then you need to talk about sourcing of inventory. Then you need to talk about other parameters. You need to talk about production scheduling. You need to talk about it, like enough capacity generation. You need to bring out machines, labor, human resource, everyone in together to make sure that you have the particular production which should meet the customer demand on time. So that is very important. Next thing is that when we talk about the effective capacity, what are the factors that affect the effective capacity, Rajshri?
Sir, the factors are facilities, product, process, human factors, operational factors, and external factors.
Explain them.
Facility is where we know the design, location, layout, and the environment.
Hmm.
And the product is the product which we design, which we wanted to design, the main product.
Hmm.
The process is what type of process which is to be followed, and its quality and quantity.
So like different, like depends na, like when you are producing different, either you are producing for short term or you're producing for long term, or are you producing for medium term, there would be set of process which you need to follow one after the other. How the demands scheduling, job scheduling is being done, all that should be structured, and to make sure that the resource utilization should happen, minimum wastage should happen, because in physics and all we know that heat is the necessary evil, and heat energy will be lost when you are working on production. At the same time you need to work on the quality standard. At the same time you know that there is a limitation of time, there's limitation of resources. You cannot use human resource for 24 hours, and you have machine restrictions, and you have your labor restrictions, you have, like, you may face challenges which would be unknown and extreme to you. And so how you will you plan, how will you consider those things comes under process. Then you have human resource, human parameters, you need to consider them, you need to motivate them, you need to train them, you need to give them content, so that they get experience of labor and learning rate, and so that the absenteeism and attrition rate can be avoided. Operational factors you understood: scheduling, material management, quality assurance, management policies, equipment breakdown, that comes under operational factor. Then when we are trying to talk about measurement of the capacity, what do you mean by the measurement of the capacity? How we can work on the measurement? Here we need to understand that the capacity of the plant is usually measured as the rate of output. For example, the unit produced per hour, day, or a week. Okay, so when we are trying to measure capacity mathematically, when we are trying to measure capacity, remember that the capacity of the plant is usually measured as the rate of output. Okay, the rate of output means, basically that means the unit what you are producing either per hour or per day or per week. And here you need to understand the fact that whenever the company makes many different product, it is hard to measure total quality in units. Okay, it's not easy to measure total capacity in units. So in such cases, capacity is measured in monetary terms, the value of goods which is being produced. Okay, so here when we are trying to measure capacity, when we are trying to measure capacity, we need to understand that the we are talking about the measurement as a rate of output. It can be in units which you are producing on different time period, and you need to understand that the different ways of measuring your capacity. It can be in the number of unit you are manufacturing, or it can be in the term of number of monetary units what you are manufacturing. Okay, so it can be under different scenarios. And whenever we talk about capacity planning decision, it involves several activities. Okay, those activities can be assessing the capacity of the existing facilities. Whatever the existing facilities you have, first you to try to analyze the capacity of these facilities. Then you talk about forecasting, and there in forecasting we are talking about forecasting the long range future capacity needs. Okay, then we are talking about identifying and analyzing the source of capacity for future needs. Okay, then we are talking about evaluating the alternative solutions of capacity based on financial, technological, and environmental consideration. And then we are talking about selecting the capacity alternative which most suited to the achieve strategic mission of the firm. Okay, so when we are talking about capacity planning decision here, we are involving several key activities. Those key activities can be first, that key activities can be assessing the capacity of existing facilities, like whatever existing facility you have, you first analyze them, that if that is enough to sustain, then why we should put more investment in the existing plant. Because we have demand in our mind. So imagine if you are having too much demand this time, then you need to like what you say, then you have to enhance the existing production planning mechanism or layout what you have. But if you see that demand would be more or less the same, then why would we you plan for investment and all? So here in capacity planning, we are assessing key parameters. The key parameters can be assessing the current capacity of the existing facilities. Then we know that what would be the demand forecasting, and then we need to think about what would be the long term capacity requirement. That idea of having what would be the long term capacity requirement, that idea you will get based on understanding the demand what we are getting. Demand what we are getting, maybe it can be cyclical, or it may be irregular, or maybe it would be secular. So that idea you we need to have. Then the parameters like identifying and analyzing possible sources of additional capacity, that is again very important. Then whatever the capacity options we have, we need to analyze those options based on technicals, based on the financial, based on the economic parameters, and then we need to choose the best capacity options that support the company long term goal, and that should be your end objective. Clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
So basically, when we are talking about capacity planning decisions, so it involves lot of factors. Okay, those basic parameters or basic factors are like this. Okay, so once you go through these factors, you'll easily understand. Capacity planning is nothing but like how will you plan your existing resources, what you have, so that you'll have a production, and that production should be meet the by the customer at the right time. That is what capacity planning is all about, where you first analyze your existing setup, then you need to think about how you could able to forecast the long range future capacity needs, so that every time when you get in data, you should not start developing your existing setup, and that will affect the quality standards and all. So we need to, based on the kind of demand forecasting data we are getting, based on that we need to consider the what would be the parameters that need to be considered for long term capacity needs. And then we need to analyze those parameters. We have to evaluate the different capacity options, okay, based on their financial, technological, and economic parameters. And then we need to choose the right customer strategy, okay, that should support the company's long term goal. Clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Any question you have?
No, sir, understood.
Can you just rephrase whatever I said? just 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 mention these points. I'll just bring water. By meanwhile, you just rephrase these points. The 5 points of what I have mentioned: assessing the capacity of existing facilities, forecasting the long-term future need, identifying and analyzing the source of capacity, evaluating the alternative source, and selecting the capacity. These all parameters, just mention it again. I'll just bring my water in the meanwhile. Adi, Rajshri, Gagna, please get an idea or discussion based on these parameters.
ಅಸೆಸಿಂಗ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಷ್ಟೇ ತಾನೇ? Somewhat, yeah. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಎಷ್ಟಿದೆ ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು. ಸೊ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಎಷ್ಟಿದೆ ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಆಮೇಲೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಫ್ಯೂಚರ್ ಲಾಂಗ್ ರನ್ಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಎಸ್ಟಿಮೇಷನ್ ಹಾಕ್ಕೊಂಡು ಆಮೇಲೆ
ಫ್ಯೂಚರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ ಸೋರ್ಸಸ್ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ನೋಡೋದು, ಐಡೆಂಟಿಫೈ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಬೇಕು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಐಡೆಂಟಿಫೈ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದನ್ನ ಆಲ್ಟರ್ನೇಟಿವ್ ರಿಸೋರ್ಸಸ್ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಇತ್ತಂದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಒಂದ್ ಚೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಬೇಕು.
ಚೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳೋದು ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ತಾನೆ, ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಿರೋದು ಇವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಯೇಟಿಂಗ್ ಆಲ್ಟರ್ನೇಟಿವ್
ಅದು
ಸೋರ್ಸಸ್ ಅಂತ.
ಅದೇ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇವಾಗ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಪ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಎಲ್ಲ ನಾವ್ ಇವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಬೇಕು ನಮ್ ಕಂಪನಿಗೆ ಯಾವ್ದು ಸೂಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ. ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಸೂಟೆಡ್ ನ ಚೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು.
Correct, correct. Because ultimately nobody want to spend more money now. So everyone want that whatever they have, if that can be managed, because whatever they have, whatever the funds what they have, whatever the facilities they have, if that is enough to get the required demand, whatever the demand has came. So if existing setup is enough to have that, then it is well and good. Why should we spend more? But sometime when you have an idea about your future, like you're thinking no, maybe this time we are getting low value of demand, but now on we will get lot of demand, like our product will have big demand and all, and the existing setup is not enough to have that. Then possibly you'll talk about capital expenditure and all. But again, you have to understand the fact that when you talk about the total cost, it is a sum of fixed cost and variable cost. If your nature of business can be done by using more variable cost and less fixed cost, then it is always a better decision, because you need to always understand that as in startups or as a new firm, when you are getting into the market, it's not always easy to get what you are getting, because certain time there would be a phase of lag where you do more hard work, but you will not achieve the economy of scale. Okay, because once you have economy of scale, then your cost of production will reduce. But initially, as in firm, you need to talk about capacity planning, which is needed whenever the company plans to increase their production or launch new product or expand their facilities. And after evaluating the current capacity, decisions should be made about new location or technologies if expansion is required. But definitely no company want to expand in very easy manner, because every time when you talk about any kind of expansion, that requires huge investment. Okay, and everyone want to like make sure that their investment should not be more, because ultimately the capital what you require, that would be financed by two ways, either by debt or either by equity. So if you are bringing too much debt also in your production cycle and all, because of debt, you will have always a commitment of interest. And then because of the commitment of the interest, if you have because of the commitment of interest you have every time, that interest you will pay before the payment of tax and all, and definitely that would affect your profitability or earning ability as a firm. So that parameters, I don't think any company definitely consider those parameters whenever they talk about the planned capacity and all. Situations, when we talk about situations whenever we are working in the firm and we are trying to analyze the capacity situation, it can be of two type. It can be capacity shortage, or it can be excess capacity. Capacity shortage is about not enough to meet the future demand. Excess capacity means when your current capacity is more than what is needed in the future. Okay, so the basic things what we have studied. Then the next thing is the what are the factors that affect the plant capacity. Those factors are basically uh, our amount of capital available for investment, very easy. And whatever the capital investment you require, then it can be the next factor which can affect your plant capacity would be the change in product design, production process, market trend, and product life cycle. Okay, the third factor can be the flexibility to increase capacity in the future, okay, we need to always have a room, and there should be always a scope way through which the current facilities, whatever we have, and we need to have kind of flexibility that we can increase the current facilities. Okay, then uh, we can talk about the level of automation or technology, what is required, okay, to make sure that we have the appropriate capacity, facility. Then we talk about the demand, market demand for the product. Then it can be the risk of product or technology, which can become outdated. Okay, then it can be the type of technology what you are considering. Okay, so I think these all are very basic uh, factors. Okay, anyone can explain these factors? What can be these explanation? What are the factors which affect the determination of plant capacity? Basically, it would be the initial investment what is required. Okay, to because you are talking about uh, either increasing. No, I don't think you would be talking about reducing the plant capacity and all. You are trying to talk about increasing the plant capacity. So if you want to increase the plant capacity so that you have good production or mass production, there you need to, first thing, you need to have capital. That capital we'll call as capital investment or initial expenditure and all, we'll call that as capital. We need funds. Once we have that fund, then only we can talk about designing the product, then only we can talk about effectively managing the product life cycle. Then we are talking about we need to have a flexibility, whatever the process we are following to convert the raw material into the finished good. That process should always have a scope of what you say, a scope of increasing or decreasing your production line or run, so that you'll always, whenever there's a less demand, you can produce less. Whenever there's more demand, you can produce more. And then nowadays, every mechanical setup, we will definitely need the role of AI, or we definitely need the role of machine learning, so that we can bring automation, so that like less human interference, if it happening in the chain of production, it would be much more better. And if the same automation, if it is being followed to produce the required demand, or to have some kind of setup which can tells the required demand, so that every time we don't have to rely on market data, external data, because that can be wrong also sometime. And we know that whatever the technology or resources we are using, that can happen obsolete anytime. Okay, so that is again which is very important parameters which we need to study whenever we are measuring, or whenever we are calculating the demand facility. The next is the form of capacity planning. The different forms of capacity planning, it can be short term or long term based on the time horizon, or it can be finite or it can be infinite, based on the resources which is being employed. Okay, everyone.
Sir,
Yeah,
sir, in factors affecting, like, what is obsolescence?
absolute way last, that
Last
means,
second part.
yeah, basically means that whenever you're using now this technology, obsolete technology, that become outdated. Imagine you have some kind of technology, some maybe CAD, AutoCAD, some kind of setup you are using, and a machinery setups you are using, where you are using some kind of technology which is calculating the demand and all. Maybe you're using for accounts, you are using maybe Tally. And but nowadays, for doing the account calculation, every company is using maybe SAP, and you are using Tally, which is outdated technology. And because of that outdated technology, you're not able to have a better clarity on the calculation of accounts and all. So that again become a problem. You're getting it right. uh, Technology
Yes,
obsolescence
sir.
means whatever technology you're using in your production and all, that can become outdated. You need advancement, or you need auto upgradation in the technology now, because with the time you are changing the production setups and all. With the time you are spending money on training of employees, bringing more feature in the product, because the end product what you're selling in the market, it need not to have always a demand. Sometime there would be some other product which is similar to your product, and that product would be much more better. And if that product demand shoot up, then you need to come up with R&D, research and development and all. That research and development should be done on the product what you are manufacturing. Again, at the same time, that research and development should be made on the product, the end product what we are manufacturing. Okay, then only the end consumer can make a differentiation between the existing product and the new product. And in order to do all these, you need technology. And the technology what you're using, that technology can also become outdated or obsolete. So you need to always think about bringing more changes into the production at the same time. In order to get that production, the whatever technology you're using, that is also very important. Then we have forms of capacity planning. Okay, discuss this forms of capacity plannings based on time period. It can be long term capacity planning, which can cover several years, involving decisions about large investments like new plants or equipment. Short term capacity planning, it focuses on meeting current or near future demand. It may involve overtime hiring or subcontracting. Okay, what do you understand by this? Long term and short term capacity planning. Long term, like I told you now, some kind of setups, they require production for a short time period. So when you are doing production for the short term period, okay, you may not be using mass production and all. And whatever what how much demand is coming, or for, and maybe your product is seasonal product, it does not have demand every time, all around the year you don't have demand. Maybe your product have demand only on particular season and all. So what you do basically, then you will not talk about employing the workforce and all. Better than that, you'll put them in a subcontract basis. Okay, when you are putting them in the subcontract basis, basically whenever the demand will come, you bring them, you give them freelancing opportunity and all, and you use them, and then when the work is done, probably they can be released again, they can be called back whenever there's a demand for the product. So in short term capacity planning, we are talking about focusing on meeting current or near future demand, and that can involve overtime, or that can involve hiring or subcontracting or overtime. Long term capacity planning, it involves several years decisions, and there we talk about more fixed cost than less variable cost. But in short term capacity planning, we talk more of variable cost and less of the fixed cost. And then based on the resources what you are employing, it can be finite capacity planning, or it can be infinite capacity planning. So finite capacity planning consider the limits of the available resources such as labor and machines, while infinite capacity planning, it assumes that there is no limit on the resources. So you know that in practically that is not possible. Whatever the resources, whatever we are consuming, that all the resources are limited in time. Okay, so basically in forms of capacity planning, we have discussed both these parameters, short term and long term capacity planning. And based on the amount of resources what is being employed, it can be finite, it can be infinite. You understand, nothing can be infinite and all. Next can be the factors which affect the capacity planning. Those, there are basically two kinds of factors, which are controllable factor, and they can be uncontrollable factor or less controllable factor. Where less controllable factor, which you can control only till certain extent, that include absenteeism, poor labor performance, machine breakdown, strikes, material shortage, natural disasters like flood or earthquake and accidents. Those things comes under less controllable factor, which you cannot control more. And as an HR or as a manager or whatever, you cannot control more. Those things comes under less controllable factor. Controllable factor which you can control, and the which either it can be number of worker, or it can be the number of machines, it can be overtime, okay, it can be shifts, it can be subcontracting, okay, it can be production schedule. All that would comes under uh, what you say, the controllable factors. So we have discussed about these, what are the factors which affect the capacity planning. Those can be controllable factor or it can be uncontrollable factor. What do you mean by controllable or uncontrollable factors?
Factors those can be controlled, like
Mm,
how many laborers are to be employed
mm,
and how many facilities or what and all should be installed. And
mm.
if at all there is some OT or something, that also we can control. And how many shifts should run in a day, all those things which are all things which we can control is known as controllable factor.
Very
And
good.
less controllable is inverse of that, like a few things we can't expect now, like if at all laborers come and do strike or something, we can't tell that. Or maybe some disasters, like earthquake, fire accidents, or natural calamities, all those things. And if at all materials go shortage also, we can't immediately recover that. So those are called less controllable factors.
Very good. Then we'll discuss about capacity requirement planning. So when it comes to capacity requirement planning, here we are talking about CRP. CRP means capacity requirement planning, and that is used as a method to find how much equipment and labor are needed to meet the production goal. Okay, and this basically works with the master production schedule, material requirement planning to ensure that the resources whatever we have, they should be available whenever they are required. So that is what we are talking about, CRP, capacity requirement planning, which is basically a technique. And by using the technique, we can figure out that whenever we need labor or whenever we need machines, whatever we are needing, we need to get that appropriately on time. That is what CRP is all about, and it is a method to find out how much equipment and labor are needed to meet the production goal. And there we do lot of Excel and Google Sheet work to make sure that the data is being ensured appropriately. Okay, then we'll talk about the strategies. There would be different strategies. Okay, whenever we talk about the strategies and all, basically, we are talking about two kinds of capacity planning strategies. Those can be a level of capacity plan, or it can be the machine, or matching the capacity with the demand plan. So basically, we talk about two kinds of requirement strategies. So here, when we are talking about label capacity planning, here we are talking about how the production system that need to be run on a steady or uniform rate. We talk about the inventory levels, how we can work on the inventory levels. Then it is used to produce and stock system. Advantage of using it, it can be simple to manage and stable operation. Disadvantage can be higher inventory cost if the production exceeded the demand. Okay, so here when we are talking about level capacity planning, we are talking about this level only, how we can basically focus on the current demand and all, and how we make sure that the will have uh, the production based on the current demand. That is what level capacity planning is all about. Then matching capacity with the demand plan, when we talk about, Okay, there we are talking about production which is adjusted to match demand every time. It can be weekly or monthly or quarterly. The advantage of using this is basically low inventory cost and fewer backlogs. And the disadvantage
Sir, you
can be.
were not audible for a second.
Second part is not audible. Okay, I'll just mention this capacity required planning strategies again. Basically, we have two kinds of strategies. One is based on level of capacity planning. The other one is the matching capacity with the demand plan. So, like here, when we are talking about label capacity plan, it is basically based on produce to stock and sell approach. Basic level capacity plan is based on this mechanism, which means produce to stock. Okay, first you produce so that you can have inventory, and then you try to sell it, where the production system are operated at uniform production level. Okay, whatever the machinery setups you have, you're using them at a uniform level, and finished goods inventories rises up and down. Okay, and that's up and down can depends on the any time when your production level exceed the demand, or your demand is exceeding the production level, and that ultimately affect your production whatever you are doing based on different time period. It can be every quarter or monthly, like that. That is what we discuss in level capacity plan. Next,
Okay, sir.
we'll talk about matching capacity with demand plan. So when we talk of matching capacity with demand plan, here we are saying that the your production is adjusted to match demand in every time period. It can be weekly or monthly or quarterly. And the advantages of using this is like matching capacity with demand plan is that involves low automation and few back orders. A disadvantage can be like you have to hire a lot, frequent hiring you need to do, the variable cost will increase. And level capacity plan, their fixed cost we are increasing, variable cost we are reducing. In level, in the case of matching capacity with demand plan, we are focusing more on fixed cost, less on variable cost. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Then next thing is to talk about optimal plant capacity. Before we go further to discuss optimal plant capacity, just give me an idea about how much you have understood about this capacity requirement planning strategies. Hello, hello, is I'm audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So basically, you understood, right? What do you mean by this matching capacity with demand plans? Rashri, Adisha, Gagna, what do you understand by this matching capacity with demand plan means?
In this plan, production capacity is matched with demand in each period, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or demand.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Sir, basically means we will have capacity. Sir, we have to balance the fluctuations in demand with the available resources that we have.
Okay. And that work we need to do every time period. That like every weekly, monthly, quarterly, like there should be a team which should keep an eye about, oh, okay, fine, how much the demand is there, and that how much the amount of demand is being matched. Suppose the demand is of 200 unit, for example, in one quarter I need to have 200 unit. Then what I'll do, so in one quarter I have how many weeks, so I'll divide. One quarter means these many days, one quarter means 90 days. 90 days means one week I have 7 days, so 90 divided by 7 if I do. Okay, so then how much I'm getting? Maybe 13 week I'm getting. So if 13 week I'm getting means, then how much I have to produce every week, so that after 90 days I have the production. Okay, so then every week I go and check. Okay, then at the end of the month, I'll check this was the weekly demand, this was the weekly requirement of production, and then this is the monthly requirement of production. So we'll keep at every regular time interval, and we know that normally the material flow and machine capacity are changed from quarter to quarter to match the demand. We know that because certain time, no, it's not like we could able to achieve the production what we are looking every time. There can be some shutdowns or there can be some issues with the machine. So every time, whenever we feel that we are lesser production, and we need to shoot up more production so that we can meet the demand, whatever the demand is there quarterly or monthly and all. Then that reworking on the data of where we keep an eye about how much is the demand and how much is the production, that all need to work on, and then only we can achieve our target. So the main advantages of using the matching capacity over demand is a low level of finished good, because we are not producing too much. And there's a principle called kaizen and all, lean manufacturing, that based on this principle only, where you don't keep too much stock, you don't keep too much stock of finished good for selling. You create stock based on the target what you have weekly or monthly or quarterly and all. And the more focus is on the targets, and whatever the targets what we have, and then we'll try to produce lesser finished good, and so that we have a lesser inventory, and that will reduce the inventory carrying cost. But at the same time, because every time when we are producing very in a small batches, that every time will create an impression. Okay, and that impression can be worked on to make sure that every time whatever you are getting the demand requirement, that is being sustained, and thereby back ordering cost and other things would be reduced. The disadvantage of using this method is that it will involve high labor and material cost, because of the frequent uh, you are making the changes in the workforce, and the cost, the overtime machines, that would definitely would affect your variable cost of production. Although it might reduce the fixed cost, but definitely it will increase the variable cost of production. Getting it, girls?
Yes, sir.
Next, we'll talk about is the optimal plant capacity. So, what is optimal plant capacity? That basically talks about the right level of capacity, what you can produce, that can ultimately minimizes your average cost per unit, and that is what we call as a best operating level. Okay, so here we are talking about determining the optimum plant capacity, and as the production increases, the average cost per unit fall also, because as if you're talking about mass production and all, definitely when you produce more, the all the variable cost factors, they will definitely will reduce. Okay, and that way you can bring economy of scale, that way you can reduce your setup time and scrap value, you can give more discounts, you can reduces all inefficiencies in the product. Okay, if you can have definitely fixed cost, but it need to spread more on units and all, that way the impact of fixed cost would not affect your what is a balance sheet and all. So when we are talking about plant capacity, they definitely have a huge influence okay, on the given time period. Okay, and then when we are talking about the plant capacity and all, here we are trying to talk about an optimum level or optimum volume of the output that need to be done every time, so that we can reduce the cost, and then that is what we call as a best operating level. And by doing all this, what we are trying to do, we are trying to bring economy of scale. If you are bringing economy of scale, automatically all the factors or which is affecting your production and all those variable factors, they can be construction and material cost factor, they can be any other factor, there those factor cost would get reduced, and we can give more discounts to the our new customers, so that they can feel more confident. And by working on, if we work on economy of scale, we'll definitely have efficiencies in the market, and that way we can reduce our our time, our setup time, our scrap time, and that is what we called as economy of scale. You understood what do you mean by economy of scale? You understood, right? What do you mean by economy of scale? Okay. So next thing you need to understand that when we are producing, and if that production goes beyond a certain level, the cost per unit increases because of issues like congestion of material, scheduling problem, damage product, lower worker morale, and overtime. So these problems are called diseconomies of scale. So every plant should aim for production level that can give them the lowest possible average cost per unit, and which is known as the optimum plant capacity. You're getting it right?
Yes, sir.
These all are very basic thing and all. And then we'll discuss this balancing of capacity. From this, we'll discuss from next class. I think this is enough for today. Fine, everyone. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you then on next class. Tomorrow, most probably, I'll not take your class. Uh, we'll have class on Monday.